Hey guys, and welcome back to Your One Room Schoolhouse. My name is Mary Barfield if you're new here, and I'm a homeschooling mama to a kindergartner and a second grader. And today's video is going to be a review comparison of two curriculums that I got a request on my last video. The curriculums that we're going to be comparing today are Build Your Library Level 0 Around the World, as well as Torchlight's Level K Worldly Wisdom. Now, in my previous video, I was doing one of my updated reviews on Level 0 Build Your Library. We are currently working our way through that right now, and I have a whole video series on that. I'll leave that up above for you guys and a link that if you want to go check that out more in detail. But I got a few requests from y'all that you wanted to see a direct comparison between these two programs, because in the homeschool world, often they are compared against each other because they are very similar, but they also have a lot of differences. And so sometimes a family will choose one over the other based on their homeschooling style and what they're looking for. And then some people, they will even combine them because they're so good in a complementary way with each other. So both these programs are secular, literature-based, PDF formatted elementary curriculums. They're what I would consider a total curriculum. They have quite a few subjects included. It's not just one that you're working on. The only thing you do need to add for both of these is math and direct phonics instruction, because this is meant for younger elementary, kindergarten level students. However, I will say with both of these, you could absolutely use these with older learners up into the later elementary years, as the literature selections are quite advanced. There's chapter books in here, and there's additional resources you can add on to make it more advanced for both programs. So if you have a kindergartner, but you want to have a third grader tag along and use this and combine them to make your life easier, you absolutely can, and both students will get a lot out of the programs. Now, before we hop into the similarities and the differences between the two programs, I thought I'd explain our personal experience with them so you know where we're coming from. Last year, my oldest daughter was in first grade, and it was our first year homeschooling, and we had everything figured out until the last minute. As I was about to start our homeschooling year, I realized we didn't have anything geography based, and I really wanted to get some geography started in first grade with her. So my friend was like, hey, check out Torchlight. You don't have to do the entire program. You can just pull the geography and culture components out of her program. And so that's what we did. So I didn't use the entire thing, but I have looked at all of it. I have reviewed all the books and everything, because I considered actually switching and doing the whole thing. So I feel well versed enough to be able to talk to the whole curriculum, as well as how it's formatted, how it works, her pedagogy, her educational philosophy, etc. And then, as I said at the beginning of this video, we are currently working our way through this. We are more than halfway through, and we are using the entire thing. And then if you know me, you know that we've added a lot onto that as well, because I am working with a second grader and a kindergartner. We're also using Amplified Online Year 1 with my oldest, Awesome and Root Science, Level 0 with both my girls, learning about space, a whole lot of other things, but we are doing the entire program with this. There's actually not one thing that we've left out of it because we are enjoying it so much. So I think the best thing is to talk about the similarities first, right? So you know where they kind of intersect and overlap, and then we'll get into where they differ, and that might help you decide which one might be better for you. Or if you are one of those families out there, you might decide, hey, we want to combine both of them, maybe take some pieces out and then pull some pieces in and use them together in a cohesive fashion. So similarities. Number one, like I mentioned already, they are both secular programs. There is no religious content in these programs. There's no anti-religious content either. They are just void of that aspect. I know a lot of religious families who use both these programs because they like to bring in their own religious studies on their own and not have the rest of their curriculum be centered in a religious study. So not to say that you can't use this. It's perfect for all families, no matter what your religious leanings or non-religious leanings are. They work great for either of you. Number two, they are very much literature based. Both really lean towards that living book, narrative type books. Both have wonderful book lists, y'all. Like really, truly, I don't think one is better than the other. I think they both have fabulous books they picked out for their curriculums. They are also very much heavy read aloud in that respect, because you are reading they're meant to read towards a younger child, a kindergartner or first grader maybe who hasn't learned how to read yet. So be prepared if you pick either of these, you will be reading aloud a lot, which we're a Charlotte Mason family, so we are totally down with that. We love that. We love reading together, so that doesn't bother me at all. But I know for some people that might be like an immediate that doesn't work for us and our schedule, etc., whatever. So definitely very much heavy literature-based curriculums. Another similarity between the two is they very much incorporate hands-on activities. It's not just reading aloud. They really provide engaging activities, which I'm actually going to also talk about in the differences between the two of them, because they kind of approach the hands-on activities a little differently. But it's not just reading. There's other activities that are involved, which really kind of get your kiddo thinking and using their hands. And so it's good for kinetic learners as well. Something I will say is they are both very much a gentle approach to geography and cultures around the world. Specifically, just one difference I'm going to talk about right now because I just think it makes the most sense to at this point. Build Your Library Level 0 is only a 30-week schedule. We do a 36-week schedule for our schooling, but they do that on purpose because it's meant to be done with younger kiddos. If you want to spread the lessons out and do them over 36 weeks, you can. We are doing it in 30 weeks, and then we're going to actually tag on the last 6 weeks, Build Your Library's pre-history 6-week unit study, because then next year we're going to really dig into ancient history and more history streams through Amblesite Online. Level K for Torchlight is a 36-week program, but it's not overly intensive. You can easily get everything done in this program within 1 week. So I just really like the way that they approach it, not only with the scheduling, but their overall approach when it comes to their different pedagogies educationally. I'll get more into that in the differences, but it is definitely a more gentle approach in my opinion. Both are very flexible and you can easily customize them to your schedule. But with that also being said, they both provide weekly schedule formatting that you can follow. So if you're like, hey, I can't even think about trying to like plan or schedule all this out. Can you just tell me what to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc.? Both of these programs do that. Here, I'll show you the first week of each program so you can see how the format is laid out. So looking at Torchlight first, here's the first week. It has it in a grid format so you can look at it like a calendar, and then it also breaks it out further with additional instructions and links and all that good stuff. And then Build Your Library Level 0 does a similar format where they print it out in a day 1, day 2, day 3, like a weekly schedule. And they say, hey, here's the book you're going to read for poetry. On this day, I would read this. Now, to that same point, like I said, it's super customizable. So you can move that poetry reading to Friday if it makes more sense, right? You can move this around. But if you are somebody who needs this, and it's already written out for you, you got it, you're ready to go. If you're somebody like me who likes to move things around and customize it to our schedule, you can easily do that as well with this. She also provides you blank sheets like this that have nothing written in it. I'll show you because that's actually what we used. I'll show it to you here. And what I did was I print out the blank sheet and then I wrote in all of this, but then I also added in other things that we were doing outside of the Build Your Library curriculum for this year. So you're able to combine and add or take out whatever you need. And I might have moved that poetry reading because I was adding another curriculum. I might have seen, Friday's a better day to do it. So I would have moved it. So again, same thing for Torchlight. They don't give you that blank grid, at least that I remember. So you don't have that, but you can put it into your own planner if you want. And then something else to note, just like Torchlight, she then breaks down each day with additional information. It's not just this reading schedule. It's like, hey, day 1, you're going to read Me on the Map. This is the activity that you're going to do with that for the day. Also recommend reading How to Make an Apple Pie and See the World. You end up making an apple pie the first week. There's a lot of good activities in here as well, just like Torchlight. Another thing I really like about both of these curriculums is that they pick literature that is, like I said, it's living books, so it's living narratives. It's a lot easier for the child to kind of relate to the stories and remember what happens in them, but it comes from a lot of different diverse perspectives, not only from ethnicity, but also sex. A lot of female lead characters, which is great because I've got girls, so they kind of love that, of course. They've got plenty of, male characters in there too. If you got little boys so don't worry about that. But lots of different perspectives, especially because we are focusing on geography and cultures. So I really find that important. And I know both programs do that beyond the level 0 because they then move into history after that in grade 1. And so I know that they're really good about bringing in different perspectives from historical accounts so that you get a well-rounded view of what happened at that time. Next, talking about cost before we get into the differences. So the cost of Build Your Library Level 0 is $29.95. And what that gets you is your full PDF, which has everything in it. It has not only your book list, the overview of what you're going to be doing, any notes that are important to you, that she provides a massive amount of additional books. If your kid's really loving Guatemala, here's some additional books that you can get your kiddo to read to really dig into that. And then obviously the weekly schedules and then the breakdown of all the activities. That also includes all of the activity pages that you print out for your kiddo too, and you create a student notebook, which I should have brought that down. I'm sorry, guys. I don't have that with me right now, but there's activities that you do for each continent and country that you learn about. And it's a lot of hands-on fun activity, but a lot of easy paper crafts, coloring, things like that, map work, etc. So again, all of that for $29.95. And then the only additional cost is the books. We get a lot from the library. I purchased those that I couldn't get from the library, a lot of them off thrift books, and then some I didn't even purchase. I just went and found a really good YouTube read aloud and it was completely sufficient. So you can easily do this program with minimal cost. For Torchlight Level 0, the cost is $32, so just a little bit more. And what that includes is you get your parent guide, which again includes very similar breakdown. I'm telling you guys, it's super similar. The book list. She gives you a lot of alternate resources too. She provides podcasts too that would be good for you to read. Additional books for older students. Both of them do that. There's so much in here. And then you also have, of course, the weekly breakdown and then the breakdown even further of what you should do with each of those readings, any projects that are included at that time, any videos you should click on and read at that time. Something additional that Torchlight does is something called extensions. So these are what I would say is if you're not trying to do a more gentle approach, maybe you have an older learner and you want to really get more out of the program, do these extensions. And then on top of that, she includes along with those extensions, additional books, videos that you can watch, apps, music. There's a plentiful amount of things in here that you can do. That also $32 includes the student notebook, which isn't necessarily activity pages like it is for Build Your Library. I don't want to get them confused. Torchlight has a book that each week you're going over specific countries. She doesn't do it by a continent approach. Build Your Library is more systematic where it's like, okay, we're going to check out North America first and all the countries in there. Then we're going to move on to South America, all the countries in there, etc. Build Your Library, I'm not sure what her method is to her madness because it does jump around. So I'm not sure how she figured out where to go after which spot. So if you like that more continent approach, Build Your Library might be better. But so what Torchlight does is she has a notebook that the child has, and then it has on top a blank map of the country you're learning about, so the kiddo can color it in. If they're able to write the name, they'll write it, and then underneath is a blank spot where they can draw a picture of something they learned about that they really enjoyed about that country, or they could write if they're writing, but most kindergartners aren't generally writing at that point. And then she has a second part to the notebook, which is optional. It's called her Trek. I can't remember what it was called. Oh, Torchlight Trek. And what it is these feature article blank pages. So there's little badges up here. So you would cut out based on what it is that your kiddo wants to write about that week. Festivals, beautiful people, culinary, it could be writer's choice, awesome animals, whatever. So you would cut out the badge, glue that here. Your kiddo would draw a picture of what it is. So let's say you guys did Canada and she wanted to draw caribou, right? Because kids love animals. And then she could write something. The only thing I would say with that is that as a kindergartner, your kid's not writing. I don't know a kindergartner that writes well enough to write in here at least. So I was doing a lot of that. I'm going to be honest with you, after the first couple weeks, I dropped that. That just wasn't realistic for my first grader at that time. nor my pre-care, because we were doing this last year. And so this would really be something I would bring in if you had an older learner working with you. Otherwise, I would just kind of skip this. If you want to talk about it verbally, I think that'd be great, but this is just a lot of work on the parent, and I just feel like my kiddos weren't getting a lot out of it, and I was just doing a lot of handwriting at that point. Now, with Torchlight, there is an additional science that you can bring in if you want to. It is a partnership between Torchlight and a company called Be Naturally Curious. If you buy the Level K program, they will give you a code that gets you 60% off the Level K Be Naturally Curious bundle. I did not do that because we were only using this for geography, culture, and character building. But that is normally $69.95 for the Level K bundle for all those science units. And then with that 60% off, I think it came down to just under $28. So that's something, if your kids are really into science, you could add that on as an additional component, but you could also add that on because it's a separate company to build your library if you wanted to, but just thought I'd mention that as an aside. Okay, so talking about the differences, I think it's better to go curriculum by curriculum. So we're going to first talk about Build Your Library rather than bouncing back and forth, because I feel like that might get confusing. So talking about Build Your Library, I think first it's best to discuss the pedagogy, because the philosophy, educational philosophy, is very different between the two. They're both very literature heavy based, which I think is great. Living narrative books, great book list, but the overall approach to education does impact, you can tell in the way the programs are written, because they are different. This is a Charlotte Mason inspired program, so obviously that Living Books comes in, but when it comes to like language arts, they're very focused on narration and copy work. The approach in the questions after you read the literature, you can tell the questions are a little different, and then how Torchlight approaches it, because of what they're trying to get out of the child. It's not so much necessarily reading comprehension, but stimulation of thought, just trying to understand what they got out of it. That's a very Charlotte Mason approach through that narration piece. Now, also one thing I will say about the book list for Build Your Library, it was a lot easier to find these books at my library. I did not have to buy as many, and a lot of the books that I didn't have at my library, I was easily able to find a really good YouTube read aloud, so I really didn't have to spend nearly as much as I think if I had done the whole Torchlight program, I would have had to buy a lot of those books, and I would have spent a lot more money on that, unfortunately. So I think the book list is more accessible, I guess is the best way to explain it in it. And you could say, well, that's just your library. Every library is different. I've seen that a lot in a lot of the discussion boards between the two programs. So I'm not the only one that has had that experience. So I can't speak for everybody else, but I can speak for myself and then all the other people that I've seen in the discussion board. So it seems to be a common thread. Also, something to note is there is a little bit of a difference in the subjects that are included in each program. So for Build Your Library, you have geography, you have tales, which is like folklore for each of the locations. You have obviously literature, and I would consider that language arts too, not a full language arts program like reading or anything, but she has your kids do narration and things like that at this level. If you have an older kid, then you could incorporate copy work. And then it also has science incorporated in here, so no extra thing that you have to add. Poetry, art, cooking, what I would consider more your culture, right? With the geography, she doesn't call it that, but I would consider that almost even a separate subject alongside geography. But those are what are included subject-wise in here. They're a little different for Torchlight, but not terribly different. In my opinion, I think this program, talking about the subjects, is much more cohesive than Torchlight when it comes to spreading the goodness of the geography and the cultures across each subject and having it all work together. And what I mean by that is that when you're, let's say, studying, let's say you're studying England per se, okay? So my literature for that week is going to be Katie in London. It's about England. My geography books, of course, the map, all that stuff, it's all going to be about England. But the tales, the folklore, it's going to be an English or British Isle folklore tale. The cooking is going to be a traditional dish from England. Even the science is focused on animals for this program. By the way, I thought I should share. It's an animal study throughout the year, and at the kindergarten level, kids love animals, and it has been a huge hit with my kiddos. But you're learning about the animals of England. Your poetry is the only thing that doesn't completely tie to the geography. However, it ties in with the science because it's all about animals. It's National Geographic's poetry of animals. It's all animals. My girls love it. And then the art is taken from England. It's something to do with England. Like you make a model of Big Ben out of cardboard. It's something to do with England. So everything ties into that country you're learning about in that moment. It is not the same with Torchlight, and I'll explain that a little bit more when I get to Torchlight. I just really liked how not just cohesive, but immersive this was. It really gets you into the culture. And that is why we decided to do the full program of this year, because then once we're done with this, next year we're going to move into ancient. So I really wanted to have a good, solid geography this year. Last year we did Torchlight, but it was very high level. We kept it really simple. My kids were in pre-K and first grade. I didn't want to go into depth about it. I realized, okay, we need to do a really good geography study this year, because next year we're going to start history, and I want my kids to understand culture and where places are on the map when we're talking about the historical events that happen in these locations. So that's why I decided to go with Build Your Library as a total curriculum rather than Torchlight this year. And the other thing I would say with Build Your Library, when it comes to the activities, it's more arts focused, and also the science is more nature focused, which is a little different than Torchlight, because again, it's that Charlotte Mason influence, that nature at a younger age. She doesn't really get into focusing a lot in STEM yet. That's more middle and high school focus is what happens with Charlotte Mason. Initially, she just wants you to be doing nature study for science because she wants you to become a really good observer and a naturalist, because if you can hone your observation skills at a young age, then when you do start these STEM level science subjects, a good observationist makes a really good scientist. And I totally agree with that. Although we do really like science, so we bring in extra science on top of everything we always do. But this is much more nature and art focused, if that's more your jam. Now talking about Torchlight, first off, I want to mention the pedagogy that, the educational philosophy that drives the creation of this program, and all of our other levels, of course, too. So Build Your Library is Charlotte Mason inspired. Torchlight, it goes more so with the Socratic method, which is more inquiry-based learning. So she even at the beginning of the program, tries to talk about what is that, how do you actually implement that with your kiddos and this program. So it's, talking about fact and fiction. When you're reading a book, talk about that, right? Is this fact or is this fiction? Why is that important to know that when you're reading it? Asking those questions. Whereas when you're doing the Charlotte Mason approach, you're not so much worrying about if it's fact or fiction. That might come up, but that's not your direct question. When you're done with the reading, you'll say, hey, tell me in your own words what you thought that passage was about, or what was your favorite part. It's a little bit different in the way you're having your kids think about the readings and attacking them. And then they are very heavy on reading comprehension. They want to make sure that your kiddo knows the facts that were discussed in the reading. Again, a little different than Charlotte Mason. If those come up and that comes out in your narration, great, but that's not the main focus. So she does give you quick reference guide. These are questions you should ask when you're doing readings throughout the week. She also has geography inquiry lessons. So it's a lot of questions that you're going to be asking your kiddos to really kind of pull out, what did you get out of this reading? What did you get out of these activities this week? So just a different approach, right? I don't think one's better or worse than the other. I think it just depends on your learning style and what your family enjoys, because your educational style and your homeschooling really does impact your lifestyle too. You're not just, okay, we're going to go do school for 2 hours and that's compartmentalized into a different part of your life. The way you homeschool is directly impacted by your lifestyle and who you are as a person. So I think it's important to know the educational philosophy when you're looking at a program, because it's not just your education, it's your lifestyle, in my opinion. And then talking about the book list. Again, it is a fantastic book list. Y'all, both of them have great book lists, but this one was less accessible to me. I had to buy every single geography book. Thankfully, I'm a good thrifter, but still, I had to buy every single book that I wanted to use from them. I didn't really have any at my library at all. So that is something I would consider. The great part is both programs put their book lists on their website so that people can go check them out before they purchase to make sure that it is going to make financial sense for you. And I highly advise you do that with any program you do, especially if it's one that's very heavily literature based and you're not just buying like one textbook per subject, you're buying multiple books if you need to, or can you get a lot of them from your library, or if they're picture books, are they really good read alouds on YouTube? Definitely check that out before you purchase any curriculum. That's my number one bit of advice. And then talking about the subjects that are included in this program. So you have your literature/language arts. Again, doesn't have reading or a direct phonics writing program in here, nor math. So both you would have to supplement with those two. But it also has geography and cultural studies. It has cooking, just like Build Your Library. It has an additional subject called character building, which I really liked a lot of its recommendations for some of the picture books, which I was able to thankfully get at my library. Those were some of the ones which was like, awesome. However, its main spine for character building, Molly and Keela, was not the biggest hit with my kids. And I hate to say it, I think it's just one of those things you got to get the book and read it to your kid and see if they like it or not. It was meh. It was lukewarm with them, and they were kind of like, oh, we have to do character building again. They did like reading Aesop's Fables and all the Zen picture books, like Zen Ghosts, Zen Shorts. They thought it was really fun because there's a panda that's the main character, and they love pandas. They also do a dedicated social studies in here, which not so much, I would say, in Build Your Library, not a direct one at least. And my oldest daughter really loved the main spine for that one, which was called 101 Awesome Women Who Changed Our World. To this date, she still pulls that out and she likes to read about all these women. Again, she's a female, so I think she relates to that. And she's like, I could be this, I can be anything I want to be when she reads these books. So I think it makes her happy. And then of course there's science in here, which I'll talk about that in a second, about the non-cohesiveness of this. But you can also add on an additional science with that Be Naturally Curious, which they give you that 60% off code for. There is art in this program and music, which there's no music in Build Your Library. And then they also have poetry in here too. So talking about the subjects and why I don't think it's as cohesive, there's still a lot of consistency across the board. Like, we're learning about this country, so a lot of the subjects are going to be involved in that country, but some of them aren't. I just think that Build Your Library does it better. That's just my opinion. So if you think, for example, if you look at the literature and language arts, the literature selections are very rarely having to do with the country you're learning about. For example, you're reading Mercy Watson, the whole 7-book series, for a good portion, for the first 5 weeks, I think, actually, the program. Yeah, Mercy Watson has nothing to do with geography or culture or anything. I just thought that was kind of an odd pick if you're doing a geography program. I personally, if I'm doing geography as a full total curriculum, I want it all to stem from that country. And then same with the character building. Well, character building had nothing to do with that. And I think character building can't really be geography specific, so I think that's totally fine. But when you're talking about science, the science didn't tie in at all. That's actually a complaint I've heard from other people on the forums, is that the science is literally, it's just a book and it's big science for little people. And all it is just random experiments, and you just do one per week. But it doesn't really tie in anywhere to the curriculum. And there's no rhyme or reason to it from what I was seeing from the scheduling. So we didn't do that science. We did earth science, so that was fine. I didn't use that last year, but I've heard that from other people, and seeing it once I looked at the program, having it, I was like, I can see why people thought it was kind of disconnected. And then same with the art and the music. The music has nothing to do with the culture of the period, the place that you're learning about. It's just, it's still good music. Like, you're learning about Tchaikovsky, Mozart, Beethoven. It's all good stuff, but it doesn't tie into the geography. Same with the art. It's just random like art projects you're going to do through a spine called Collage Workshop for Kids. And then same with the poetry. It doesn't tie into the curriculum in any way. It's just, it's the main spine is Song of the Wild. So I think it's about animals and things like that in nature, but it doesn't tie in anywhere, which it doesn't have to, right? Like, I'm saying this from my opinion, y'all. If that doesn't matter to you, go with Torchlight. It's a great curriculum. But for me, I really wanted the entire year to be super immersive, and I just wanted it to be this amazing trip around the world where we're doing our art from there, and we're doing all of our readings, and we're learning about the animals from there in the science program. I wanted it in the cooking and all that stuff, right? And if you followed any of my other videos, you know that cooking has probably been our weakest point. It's hit or miss if we get it done that week. But even still, like when we were learning about Japan, I was like, oh, I don't have time to cook. I was like, let's run to the grocery store and get some sushi because my girls love sushi. And then they were like, wait, sushi's from Japan? I was like, yeah. And so, there's still, you don't have to necessarily cook it. You can just go buy pre-made meals that are in that same, cultural aspect that you're learning about, if that makes sense. So that's why I say it's just not as cohesive. There's kind of some parts brought in that just don't tie into the geography, but if that doesn't matter to you, then don't worry about it. That just was something that was important to me to have for this year. And then the last thing I will say before closing this out, because I don't want this to get too long because it already has, this is much more when it comes to the activities. I said the Build Your Library was art and nature focused. This, when it comes to the activities, it is much more STEM based. Because of that big science little people, it's true experiments. Like you're mixing baking soda and vinegar and finding out that they fizzle up and they explode into a volcano. I'm just kidding, but you know what I'm saying. It is true experiments that you're doing hands-on activities with. It's not so much artsy and nature focused in that respect with your activities, like paper crafts, I guess is the best way to explain what you do with Build Your Library. This isn't paper crafts as much, but if you really like STEM, again, that's more of a Socratic focus rather than the Charlotte Mason, then this is your go-to, right? And my kids do like science and STEM, but we bring that in other ways through Blossom and Roots Science, because I love their science. So that's pretty much it. I feel like I hit all the big similarities, the big differences, and as you can see, there are a lot of similarities between the two, and that is why so many people you will find do combine them, but you can't combine both of them together without taking some things out. So you might have to pick like the science from this and the art from Build Your Library. You kind of gotta smush them together, or if you want to do all of it, I would suggest spreading it over 2 years, but I feel like that would be a very long trip around the world. Just my personal opinion. But that is it. That's all I've got for you guys. Hopefully that helps you if you are looking at one or both of those programs and you're looking at it for next year and you're thinking about doing it with your kiddos. Both, I think, are very viable options. We've really enjoyed working through both of them. Oh, one other thing I just wanted to say before I forget. One thing that I really liked about Torchlight, that Build Your Library is kind of at videos. They have such good video links. So what I did this year is, since we had this, whenever like we were learning about Canada, I would pull up the Canada links from this one and I would play the videos, because she might give you 1 or 2 per week. She gives you like 5 or 6 in here, and it's amazing. And they're all really good videos for kids that are on the younger elementary level. So sorry, I just wanted to add that in there. Big hit of her, big fan of her videos. But okay, that's it now. Totally the last thing I'm gonna say. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. I'm always happy to answer your questions. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you are new to my channel, definitely hit that subscribe button if you like anything to do with homeschooling and mom life. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, y'all.